Waited in line.
Waited in line, as one should. I'm a same-day voter, always have been, and I want to feel more tactile, like the paper ballot as well. And like millions of Californians, it's good to see a line. It's the first time in a long time where I actually prefer to see lines as opposed to see nobody queued up. So it's an exciting day. California is finally in play. It matters greatly, outsized influence. And for me, it's also an important day because we have the only statewide ballot initiative, Prop 13, that is critical for the fate and future of our public schools. So it's an honor to be able to support that as well.
You were on the road all day yesterday.
Been on the road the last week or so, all over the state of California, reminding people that there's an election today. So much of the focus, obviously, over the weekend was South Carolina, the presidential primary, but reminding people of Democratic Central Committees, reminding them of local ballot initiatives, and then again, the only statewide ballot initiative, Prop 13. And I say that only to make this point, you may never see that again, because this November, I can assure you, there are going to be a significant number of initiatives that are going to be placed on the ballot. So this one's an important one for the state, an important one for our kids.
Governor, as it's election day, the other really big thing that everyone is thinking about today and worried about today is coronavirus. Yesterday there was a discussion about public health funding, and I just wonder, you resisted putting more money into efforts. You said California has enough money to address this?
Oh, certainly never resisted putting more money, quite the contrary. I said that we are uniquely positioned with our relationships in the federal government, our relationships in Congress, and the work that we're doing to make sure we draw down the appropriate amount of federal funding. But the state is not in need of money. Money right now is not an impediment, it's not an issue. As you guys know, in the budget presentation I made in January, we set aside money, discretionary account for emergencies along the lines of this. So we're able to draw down those dollars in real time, at least $20 million just in that account. So in terms of the immediacy, that's not an issue. In terms of the medium and long term, of course, weeks and months, and then we'll make a determination. But money is not an impediment.
But what about long term? And instead of just reacting, preventing this type of stuff, does the state public health agency need more stable funding, more money to have the state take a more proactive role?
I don't think so. I mean, in this context, the federal government plays an outsized role in this space. Our national labs play an outside role. Our UC system plays an outside role. All well resourced. The state of California's health department is extraordinarily well resourced. We're doing more in the healthcare space simply than any other state in America. Amply resourced over the last few years. I mean, so as it relates to this moment, no, but as it relates to an assessment of where we're going into the future, we'll make that determination in real time. We're doing pandemic planning, we're updating our pandemic plan, we're doing tabletop exercises we've been doing the last few days. Friday we have a significantly larger one. We have our SOC, our State Operations Center, up at a level 2, which is slightly higher than it's been in the past, and we're working with legislative leaders to the extent we need additional resources. I always have the opportunity to do a declaration of emergency if we need to draw down not just more resources, but to be more resourceful in terms of staffing requirements and regulatory considerations, and we can do that in a moment's notice, and we've already pre-drafted those things. But at this moment, as I stand here, at this exact moment, because things change hour by hour, I don't see that as necessary, but tomorrow, the next few days, perhaps it would be, but that's based on an assessment of the facts in real time. I will say this, number 43 is yesterday's number. You'll be getting new numbers today, later this afternoon. Back to my point, this is a dynamic situation. More test kits are coming to the state of California in real time. Everybody's doing more in that space across the country, so you're going to see more numbers as a consequence of more testing protocols. People should be prepared for that and not panicked by that. And we're very encouraged of the number of tests that are finally arriving in the state.
Governor, on the politics of not endorse another candidate after.
I felt like we're at a moment where I was hoping we'd find some unity, and I think my voice is better served in that space than asserting myself on an endorsement that at the end of the day may not amount to much. I mean, I'm not naive about endorsements. I think they matter unless you don't have them, as often the case, and I think it wasn't particularly necessary in the state of California. Look, I think one thing we share in common, we're the most un-Trump state in the United States of America. I want to maintain that cohesiveness and that frame, and I'm very confident that we're going to have a very robust nominee, and Donald Trump's time in the White House is numbered.
Can you comment on the last 24 hours? It's been a whirlwind a few days for the Democrats. What do you make of the two candidates dropping out and supporting Joe Biden?
I mean, by any objective measure, that was a significant boost to the Biden campaign. By any objective measure, that was talking to some of the other campaigns that had dropped out earlier, some of the consultants, not just the Harris campaign, but some of the others. That was about as significant a night that you can have in politics before a major primary, Super Tuesday. So it was a huge boost, and you can't substitute all the money in the world, doesn't substitute for all the free media over the last 48 hours. It was profound and significant. And so it may manifest in real time. I think it may manifest in the lines you'll see today, and some clarity in terms of people's desire to vote and conviction that their vote matters. So I think it was a good boost more broadly to democracy and so the Democratic Party.
Bernie Sanders is polling really well. Some of the supporters feel like they're getting stiffed by some of these candidates, backing Joe Biden. What do you think?
It's the nature of the process. We all feel that way when we don't get, I've been in a lot of campaigns and folks drop out and they support the other candidate. You feel a little raw about that in the moment, and then 2 months later you're standing next to them at a rally and they're saying all these wonderful things about you. So that's the nature of the political process. And I'll just remind folks, I will say it is a lot of fun going online and watching the Republican debates a few years ago. I mean, it's just miraculous that the Republican Party is so united around Donald Trump after what they went through. So we've done nothing like that. I don't think there's any real damage in the Democratic primary base. This party will come around, I think, in remarkable ways around the convention. And tonight's going to be very clarifying on the question.
Governor, on coronavirus, what are you planning to use that $20 million you've requested for?
That's a work in progress as well. I mean, right now we're assessing the current costs that we've already borne at the local level, regional level, county and state level, and then we're presenting that to our congressional representatives. We've been working very closely with them over the last week. So we're making sure those dollars are accurate. It's mostly on a reimbursement basis as it relates to the current moment. This money just avails itself for emergency appropriation grants that are needed in real time. Again, it's interesting. It's rare the case, and I would say this, I can assure you, money is not the impediment at the moment. My deeper issue around the issue of money, more broadly defined, is not the state and local resources. It's the individual that wants to get tested that's getting a huge bill for that test. And that's something we're working on to clarify. And we hope to have something concrete in the next number of hours, at the latest tomorrow, to address that anxiety. People should feel confident in their ability to get tested without getting a huge bill on the back end. And that's the one area when it comes to the issue of money right now that I'm particularly focused on.
The governor of New York yesterday waived all kind of out-of-pocket costs for people who want to get tested. Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, we're looking to clarify the state's role in that respect.
Whether you have authority to do it?
We're just looking to clarify the state's authority in that respect.
What do you have to say to people who are scared to come out to the polls because they don't want to be exposed to germs in general?
Well, I mean, I'd encourage them to take a look at this shot. And, we're all here, and I've been to half a dozen schools in the last few days and a bunch of rallies, shaking a lot of hands. And inappropriately taking precaution, washing my hands. Not being panicked, but being prepared and just being thoughtful. And we're in flu season more broadly, but obviously the novel virus creates appropriately more anxiety. And so that's all. We're just not at a point yet to make a determination of whether or not we should socially distance ourselves in circumstances like this, or more broadly in our public education system or in sporting events. But I can assure you, in real time, we are assessing that in the protocols. And we are on the phone around the world. We just had a conference call this morning, folks overseas talking about their protocols. And so we're getting the benefit of best practices, and we're getting the benefit of a lot of advice. I've never had more advice in this space from folks that discovered, you name the virus, that happened disproportionately. We live in California, work in California, and are well resourced in the state of California, that are offering their perspective, new technologies, AI, data prediction, new tabletop exercises that can look at the spread, look at concentration of spread. We address issues of senior centers, assisted living, adult care, as we address the issues of elementary versus high schools and the nuances there. All those things being worked out in real time. And as I say, because it's so dynamic, because the numbers change in real time, I can assure you we are prepared to make adjustments in our approach in real time as well.
Are you doing anything in particular for skilled nursing facilities?
Yeah, we are clarifying protocols. We've been in contact with leaders in that space and looking at hygiene issues and looking at concentration and spread concerns, social distancing issues related to caregivers as well in those facilities. And we'll have, again, more clarification in that space in the next day or so as well. But we are working behind the scenes with the most vulnerable population and certainly our seniors in those facilities based on what's happening, not just Seattle, but what's happening around the rest of the world is obvious point of concern.
So Vice President Biden had last report almost no money.
That's going to change.
Is that going to change?
It's changing in real time. It's changed in the last 48 hours, the online fundraising, the number of individuals now that may have been interested but now are enthusiastically engaged on fundraising. That's already taken shape. It's interesting. I talked to a couple donors that happened to be in Oakland yesterday that were on the fence and were with Pete Buttigieg, and now they are turning over their support quite significantly to the Biden campaign. So, by any objective measure, is that this is not a subjective analysis, and I'm not offering anything that's surprising or new. It was a big boost. The last 48 hours was a huge boost to the campaign.
Governor, your public health department yesterday announced a fourth community-wide transmission and did not say where that person is from or where they are.
Yeah, we're going to have more information later this afternoon.
Why would you not say where?
Because we're working with the CDC. There's a protocol of confirmation that we take very seriously, and we're sober about it. We don't want to lead people to wrong conclusions, so we verify things. So you may report things at a local level that we don't confirm because we are working with our federal partners to make sure that they're confirmed. So we just want to all stay on the same page.
Can you talk about cost for testing?
What's that?
Can you talk about cost for testing? How expensive is the testing?
Well, we're just hearing, particularly in other parts of the country, some usurious fees that are being attached to the tests. We want to make sure that we address those protocols and make sure the health plans, insurance, make sure the public agencies are all on the same page. So we're assessing all those protocols, and we're trying to get those costs down to minimum or just completely waive those costs, determining whether we can do that, what's appropriate, and what's our authority to do that. But we don't want that to be an impediment for people to get tested, and unfortunately I think in some cases that's been highlighted in other parts of the country.
About voting today, thousands of people have voted already.
I love this. These lines are fabulous.
But they may have voted for Pete Buttigieg or Amy Klobuchar, now they've dropped that. Anything?
Yeah, I mean, that's the benefit and the burden of early voting. I'll still skew early voting. And that's always a risk. Everybody walks in with their eyes wide open about that. They knew how dynamic this election was. We were voting around the time of Iowa, but people knew that invariably someone would probably drop out. So that's a risk you take. But all the rest of the things you voted for on the ballot still profoundly matter. That won't change. And I don't think it's as significant, perhaps, as some believe, but Paul Mitchell and others have assessed, and I really refer and defer to folks like Paul that have a better assessment of this than people like myself. But there's some regret, I imagine. Same time, a lot of folks, I talked to one of them yesterday, said, I'm glad I voted for who I voted for. I don't care that she dropped out, which was interesting. So it was a point of pride that was an Amy Klobuchar supporter. And she said, it doesn't matter to me. I'm glad she's going to, she wanted to see that boost. So,
Governor, did I hear you? I just want to make sure I heard you correctly say that you thought people shouldn't face costs to get tested to address this?
Not usurious costs is my point.
Not what?
Usurious costs. There have been some examples of thousands of dollars that have been charged in bills in other states, and that's absurd. And so I don't know what's appropriate, and that's exactly what our experts are working on today to see what's appropriate and what our role is in terms of encouraging more appropriate behavior. There is a cost associated with the test, the diagnostics of the test. We now have, and it's a changing number, we have 9 labs currently testing. We may have as much as 11 later this afternoon. We believe we'll get up to 20 in the next few days of labs in the state of California that can do the tests. As you know, to do the specimen, that's available everywhere. People could do that easily. But it's where they do it and how concentrated the staffing is and how isolated some of the specimen. So there's costs associated, and we just have to adjudicate all of that, make a determination. But I think I read something like 3,000. I don't remember what it was, but it was thousands of dollars that someone was billed the other day. And that's just absurd.
Governor, are you happier with the CDC's testing protocols this week than you were last week? Last week you said you were frustrated with the CDC's testing protocols.
Well, I didn't express frustration. I observed the fundamental fact that we had 200 testing kits and we couldn't use them, and that it was the middle of February. But I also made the point when I stated that in real time, the CDC had loosened up those protocols and had committed to sending new kits to California. We now have received those kits. We have now the ability, and by the way, kits are loosely defined. We have to be careful how we report the kits because a kit has multiple tests associated. Now there's different kinds of kits, so I just caution all of you when we talk about kits. There are many versions now of these kits that are coming in terms of the total number, because we split kits now, how many tests. So we're going to start, just forewarning, we're going to start shifting the nomenclature to the number of tests, not the number of kits, just to make it easier so you'll know how many individuals are being tested. But we have the ability to get thousands now, and more are coming in real time. And so we're very confident that the CDC gets it and they're getting it done, and that our needs will be met.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody. Governor, just one more thing.
Okay.